What's up, YouTube? So today's stream I prepared pretty quick because I wasn't planning on streaming today, but then I got some requests to do so. So here you are. I put together a show quickly called The Meaning of Music, and here I'm saying initial investigations because this is a very, very big topic that there's a lot to say about. So today we're just going to get started, but hopefully from you all we could learn about a lot of stuff. So if anybody has anything relevant to share related to this topic, please do share, because it is you all and your interests that keeps this show going, as opposed to just me writing my own vlog journal. It's everybody's show here. So let's get started. Okay, so let's just, I'll read my initial topic introduction here, and we could talk about what's going on here. So this is autobiographical, so no one's gonna fact check me here, because I'm just reporting on my own life and my own experience. So I'm curious though, if any of you in the audience, have you had similar experiences? Is what I'm saying here something you've thought about? One of the cool parts about YouTube and blogs and things like that is that people could go ahead and share stuff, and maybe they didn't know anybody in their life that had similar experiences, but through the interwebs, getting connected with people from all around the world of all different ages, then suddenly we could find that the things that we found interesting or strange or off-putting or really beautiful and interesting that other people didn't seem to care about, all these things, through the interwebs, we could find other people to talk to about this stuff. So let's get started. I'll just read here. For a long time, I've liked music itself a lot, but have not really enjoyed much popular music. Furthermore, I'd find myself more interested in music itself than the drama, fashion, etc. of musicians or performers. I also noticed that what counts as music in the modern world is a very limited thing, often just a 3 to 6 minute track that could be played on the radio. But exploring other types of music, such as classical music, I could see how music has been used for many more purposes occasions than making ear viruses in supermarkets. In modern times, genres like video game soundtracks, film scores, and long electronic music mixes are examples of music that many of us listen to every day, which are not songs or tracks in the sense of catchy pop songs. So that supermarket blasting ear virus stuff. I somewhat jokingly have called music mind control waves, knowing that it literally takes the form of sound waves and is used to manipulate emotions, mood, etc. Seems like this observation was kind of based. So that's my introduction note here, which I'll leave up on the screen. Yeah, so like what do I mean by music, like in music proper? For example, what we would call a lot of music theory nowadays, like seeing how, well, like music composition, how are chords put together? How are like a 3/4 time signature versus a 4/4 time signature? Where might you use one and where might you use the other? Even stuff like instrumentation. So when might a composer choose to have a guitar versus a horn? When might a fast rhythm be used versus a slower rhythm? Do we have to use these torturous devices called metronomes to practice? Or is it more natural to count stuff ourselves and not so much use the metronome except for outside of more specific sorts of practice routines? So questions and issues like that have always been interesting to me, and they continue to be interesting to me. I myself am not an accomplished musician whatsoever, but learning about music and then also talking to skilled practitioners of music has been a interesting thing to me. And of course, if anybody in the audience here is a music enthusiast, especially if you play music or build instruments or do something on the, I'll call the cutting edge science side of music, then that is really cool. I'd like to hear from you. All right, let's follow what we're developing as a normal show format and get into our words of the day. So naturally, I looked into the etymology of the word music for doing this stream about the meaning of music. And sure enough, the Latin word musica means music, so very similar to the English word. And the Latin word comes from the Greek. So then I went ahead and I looked at the Greek word, which you have right here, musiki, and it means any of the muses' arts, especially music and lyrical poetry set to music. So that is very interesting, and we will have to look more at the Greek muses. Now, I will say that a lot of this stuff, it's all new to me. That's another reason I call this initial investigations. Because, for example, I had some piano lessons as a kid. I was quite bad. Sometimes I would try to practice hard and be able to play well, but I didn't really want to play. I wasn't inspired. I didn't really want to play any pieces. That was one of the things that made it hard for me to learn. So I was pretty directionless and didn't get anywhere. And then later in my life, I taught myself a bunch of guitar. So I often pull up a guitar for illustrative purposes. But throughout this, talking about music, oftentimes you're given like a music book, and it gets right into how to play music. So very practical knowledge in order to get started with your instrument. But just what exactly the history of music is, how it's been used, and so on and so forth. Probably most people's access to that in the past has been like documentaries and stuff on contemporary musicians. But, of course, in a lot of writings, we have much information about music generally. And, one source that I'm probably going to be checking out a lot more, which I don't know very well, is the Psalms. So, Christian Psalms. I have a Psalter here, the book of the Psalms. And you may be familiar with King David. So here I have a Slavonic Psalter, but there's King David shown right here on the front. And King David, of course, was known for his skill as a musician. And I think as it seems throughout history, like a lot of the times people working jobs, for example, you're a shepherd, you're watching some sheep, then it might be during that time that people would practice and play music in order to keep themselves awake, occupied, engaged while they're, watching sheep eat grass and also keeping their eyes out. So music is the original, to keep you focused and awake as a security guard. Then this is an essential device, a monitoring device. If you're being kept awake, becoming skillful with music, then it, of course, offers a lot of utility for helping people get through difficult working times. And, you all could tell me, for example, when you have to study, do paperwork, and so on and so forth, do you often use music of some kind to help you with what you're doing? And if so, what sort of music do you listen to? I've noticed on YouTube, and we've discussed this before on stream, there's like a huge genre if I search like study music, and we could look at the particular forms of the type of music that they show us here. So oftentimes you'll have like here ambient music for focus on concentration, and we take a listen, take a look at what's being shown. So they call this quiet quest, and as you could hear, it's not really loud, not a ton of drums, very kind of even. And then this particular one is matched up with nature scenery. So I could even see, like, what if somebody had more than one monitor going? You might actually full screen a video like this and then have it going on in the background, trying to play some pleasant sounds while you're trying to work. Of course, they're going to target the weeaboos. So what do we have here? So we got some traditional Asian sounding instrumentation, and note for these common for like study type playlists, there's no lyrics, because the lyrics might distract you, like you're supposed to be doing math or something, and then you have some lyrics might make your life harder. What else do we have? Chinese. What's Western ambient? What's that going to sound like? Okay, so it's West as in cowboy Western. But I imagine too for this one there's no lyrics. Cool. So that one actually, in my headphones, sounded like the audio quality was quite good. And it really gives a sense of expanse. So in our current day and age, there's many forms in which we experience music that isn't just 3 to 6 minute tracks about who knows what. Not just supermarket pop. Instead, like I was just showing with YouTube, with these study playlists and stuff, people will be using music for all sorts of purposes, including aiding in concentration. Maybe you're in a really busy place, you actually need to block out noise, so you use like noise canceling headphones, and you listen to some ambient music that makes you feel like you're outside when really you're in your Ouija pod. So all sorts of different sorts of music people might have. Cool. So what else do we have to look at for this topic? Let's take a look at the muses. So as I said, I have not really researched this ancient history stuff much, but I am curious to learn more. So what are the muses? What do they do? According to Wikipedia, in ancient Greek religion and mythology, the muses, ancient Greek muses, are the inspirational goddesses of literature, science, and the arts. They are considered the source of knowledge embodied in poetry, lyric songs, and myths that were related orally for centuries in ancient Greek culture. So this one bit here is interesting. The muses are the source of the knowledge. So we could compare, let's just compare like in modern times. Oftentimes we talk about like Einstein being a really smart guy, or Edison through his hard work and grit sort of discovering and finding stuff out. It seems that when you go to other and older traditions, oftentimes the origin of stuff is not in humans being geniuses and figuring things out. Rather, it would be in some other type of entity, whether it's knowledge from God with the capital G, but more often gods with the lowercase g, such as the muses, who are goddesses or gods. Some sort of knowledge, some way of doing things is revealed to humans. So humans don't figure out how to do stuff in the same way that we talk about scientific discovery and innovation and all that in our present era. Rather, people would talk about patterns being revealed to them by other entities that are more knowledgeable, more wise than ourselves. All right. Etymology: the word muses, ancient Greek musei, perhaps came from the O grade of the Proto-Indo-European root men, the basic meaning of which is put in mind, and verb formations with transitive function and have in mind in those with intransitive function, or from the root men, to tower mountain, since all the most important cult centers of the muses were on mountains or hills. Okay, that's interesting too. R.S.P. Beeks rejects the latter etymology and suggests that a pre-Greek origin is also possible. So the Greek word for the muses, we don't know exactly where it's from, but two suggestions of meaning here that seem related are have in mind or putting it in the mind, because, well, you could think with music, you have an idea of a musical idea to express, and then you express it. And then also this idea of mountains and hills, which is like you ascend a mountain in order for some sort of knowledge to be revealed to you. And I'm aware in like ancient practices and stuff, people would talk about things like, say, pillars in high places or something. So let's look at the New World Encyclopedia. Research begins here. A high place, Hebrew bamot or bama, was a raised altar or hilltop shrine in ancient Israelite and Canaanite times, described as existing from the patriarchs period through at least the 6th century BCE and beyond, so on and so forth. It's an interesting thing, though, to see that throughout the world, hilltop shrines are common. Like, let's look really quick at, I'll just search India hill shrine. Let's see what we find. We're joined by Reaper. Reaper says hello. Okay, so here we're just looking at how the idea of having some kind of shrine on a hill and knowledge or wisdom of some kind being revealed in high places is an ongoing meme trope, I don't know what to call it, in ancient history. And we see how the muses, the root for that muse might come from to tower or mountain, or to put in mind. And the muses would reveal knowledge, poetry, lyrics, lyrical song, and myth to people. So it seems that there's this association in many different cultures between wisdom, high places, and music things. Okay. Right, so many shrines and holy places will be situated on hills. Look at that strong beast. And let's just look at China Mountain Shrine. Just so two different places. We'll look at India and China. So here's an example. Is this a church that's built on a high place? Syrian Christians built a church on a mountain. And is this some labeled sites? All right. More interesting map explorations to do at a different point. What's another shrine? We're joined by another guest, TTHZLN. What's up? Welcome. Cool. So then just some images here of what a hilltop shrine might look like in India. So it would be interesting. We could add this as a note. Music around the world. And I'll add the question, taught by gods. So the Greeks, they say that the muses taught them music, but we could look at other musical traditions, like in India, where they have some pretty sick hand drumming, and China, Japan, Korea, other places, and see what they have to say. Man, that horizon looks pretty flat. I don't know about you guys, but and this too is a stitched together panoramic photo. So maybe it's just an artifact of the type of photo, but it looks pretty flat to me. I don't know. You'll tell me. Okay, another shrine. Another shrine. So I think that's fine just to make this point of looking at muses and music as being something that's taught to people. So let's look a little more about muses and what's up with them. So exactly how many there are. Are there 9 muses? I'm not sure. Oh, that also reminds me. I think like recently some K-pop band, they call themselves 9 muses or something. Yeah, so this is all relevant if we're talking about in the new world, the metaverse sort of rebooting and recreating all sorts of stuff. We have 9 muses formed by Star Empire Entertainment, and it looks like 9 muses did not succeed. There were some corporate wars, and they tried to do a comeback where they didn't have 9 people. And then the 9 muses disbanded after 9 years. Reaper says, what about the sirens? I don't know about the sirens. I get the sirens had songs, right? We could look at sirens Greek. Star Cheguk, Star Empire Entertainment. Man, those Koreans come up with quite the names. There was like this North Korean Linux distribution. I think it was called Red Star Linux. Yeah, Red Star OS. Burgenbjörn. So I guess Koreans like stars. Alright, let's look at sirens really quick. In Greek mythology, the sirens, Sirin, were very dangerous creatures who lured nearby sailors with their enchanting music and singing voices. That's very interesting. To shipwreck on the rocky coast of their island, it is said that they can even charm the winds. Roman poets placed them on some small islands called Sirenum Scopuli. And some later rationalized traditions, the literal geography of the flowery island of Anthemoessa, or Anthemusa, sounds like muse, is fixed, sometimes on Cape Pilorum, and at others in the islands known as the Cyrenus, near Paestum or in Caprae. All such locations were surrounded by cliffs and rocks. So then the siren word looks like it's associated with the meaning to tie, join, fasten, bind, or entangle. So the sirens could also take the form of like women, like the muses, associated with female form. And they might have mixed human and animal features. And a big chart. Okay, here the sirens were called the muses of the lower world, so there is an association. We could look mythology, how they're associated with the muses. Okay, so maybe they have a rivalry. One legend says that Hera, queen of the gods, persuaded the sirens to enter a singing contest with the muses. The muses won the competition and then plucked out all the sirens' feathers and made crowns out of them. Out of their anguish from losing the competition, writes Stephanus of Byzantium, the sirens turned white and fell into the sea of Optera, featherless, where they formed the islands in the bay that were called Levke, the white ones. That language. And then a lot of modern art depictions. Got some naked ladies paintings. Got some bird ladies attacking a... That looks like Twitter. Reaper says, also Pan with his lute when the Pied Piper theme of trickster characters using music as a weapon against people, getting them to follow their tune to their demise. Compare it with modern times. Yeah, that's okay. We got a bunch more. Let's add this to the list of topics to look at. So the sirens, Pied Piper. So we won't do all these today, but good to have notes. More music in older stories. Cool. So let's just look at some of the music forms associated with the muses. So epic poetry, history, which could go with the poetry, so telling history in poetic form. Flutes and music, comedy and pastoral poetry. Tragedy, dance, love poetry, and lyric poetry, sacred poetry, and then here, this one is interesting, astronomy. So I wanted to bring up too how there has long been an association with astronomy and music, and I will bring up here the Musica Universalis, also called music of the spheres or harmony of the spheres, is a philosophical concept that regards proportions in the movement of celestial bodies, the sun, moon, and planets as a form of music. The theory originated in ancient Greece, was a tenet of Pythagoreanism, and was later developed by 16th century astronomer Johannes Kepler. Kepler did not believe this music to be audible, but felt that it could nevertheless be heard by the soul. The idea continued to appeal to scholars until the end of the Renaissance, influencing many schools of thought, including humanism. So let's tie some of these theories together. If we look at old teachings about music, people speak very, poetically in all sorts of ways about the power of music. We can see with the muses that it's not just music itself, but poetry. So using language in a particular way, a musical way, as well as dance and probably things we would call ritual would also be associated with this, as well as the telling of history, which might take the form of like poetry. All right, cult. So let's actually really quick look up the etymology of the word cult, because here we're talking about the cult of the muses. Nowadays, I think in we have a very negative association with the word cult, like, oh, you're in a cult, you're a cray cray. But in the ancient world, we could look at how the word cult or its various forms were used to describe all sorts of practices that people would do. So here, from French culte, from Latin cultus, care, adoration, cult, from colo, cultivate or protect. And then we'll skip over the definition we all know, the modern one, to number 2, the veneration, devotion, and religious rites given to a deity, especially in a historical polytheistic context. So a devotion to a particular muse would fall under this, or in a Christian context to a saint. And so you might speak of the cult of Apollo or the cult of Mary. And this cult does not mean like crazy people who reject the mainstream necessarily. You could have like a special devotion to someone, and that could be like compatible with the main like state religion, whatever we're talking about. So here, the cult of the Muses was also commonly connected to that of Apollo. And then here, yeah, the different muses and what they're associated with. So perhaps if you're, depending which domain you are a practitioner of, you might have a devotion to one of the particular muses. And here, interestingly, with these emblems here, we could see the different tools associated with these cults. So here, Calliope, a writing tablet. So before the iPad, there were other tablets, believe it or not. A wax tablet made of wood and covered with a layer of wax. Cool. The stylus, which goes with the tablet, and then the lyre. Then we have Clio, history, scrolls, books, the cornet, an early wind instrument, the laurel wreath, erato, love poetry. So this kithara, I think henceforth been lost, but is this where the guitar came from? So maybe the love poetry now, the instrument associated with this, has a relationship, at least in name, with the modern day guitar. And we have some really intense, look at that slouching man wooing the female audience with his mad kithara skills. Alright, then more instruments, a double reeded thing. So you could dual wield a mouthed instrument. Okay, tragedy, tragic masks. So here, what we might call drama associated with theater would be associated here. Lyre with the plectrum. So do you play with a pick or do you use your fingers? In any case, you could see here that all sorts of interesting associations, and for a lot of these we could see how the ancient recorded pattern kind of plays out in modern times. So for example, looking at love poetry, clearly a lot of like contemporary rock music, guitar music, it is associated with the modern form of love poetry. So while this might be a description of an ancient cult, ancient devotion, still in modern times we could see similar things. So maybe for these other examples, likewise, you could find equivalent examples. And yes, probably if you search for art examples of the muses, you get lots of artists trying to envision them. A lot of non-PG images, though, created in the art world for the muses. So let us get back on topic here. So we looked at the musics, the harmony of the spheres. Let's quickly look at some things that Plato had to say about music. So we are going from France Musique, and they have this article from 2017 on Plato. So let's see what this says about Plato. And I read, Plato may never have devoted a dialogue to music, but music suffused his entire work. Music is everywhere and fed into the construction of his plans for a new city. Athens was exhausted by a century of almost successive wars and was gradually losing its hegemony over Greek cities. Plato was Athenian and sensed that his city was on the brink of ruin. It was this context of political upheaval, the 30 tyrants had seized power and Socrates had been put to death, that led the philosopher to consider an alternative to his decaying political system. So Plato was a doomer. He saw collapse of Western society, well, Athenian society, and this article is claiming that was one of his motivations for composing the Republic. Article continues. The Republic fulfilled this role. The history of Athens is constantly in the background of the dialogues, where Plato expounds his plan for an ideal city in response to the ongoing political upheavals. Plato takes Socrates' voice to debate about justice, a concept that would subsequently be elevated to the justice of the soul. The philosopher saw the ideal city as regulated, quote, wise, courageous, moderate, and just. And that's a quote from the Republic. It is the incarnation of harmony, like the harmony found in nature. So that is an interesting bit. So with a lot of spiritual type teachings, you could say how there's like an idea, a thought, something that is not yet materialized, and then the work of people is often to, with their hands, with their minds, with their efforts, to bring something into being that was not before. So here it's talking about how Plato saw the city as an incarnation of harmony. He has all these ideas that he's writing in this book, The Republic. Then if you actually do it, you actually build it. That is the project that one person alone cannot do. You need everyone coming together to do that. All right. What is music's role? Plato believed that music has an influence on the soul, but this influence is strictly dichotomous. It is either good or bad. Its powerful influence on the human soul stems from the similarity between music and astronomy in the ancient Greeks' eyes. Based on Pythagorean number theory, music was governed by mathematics, just like the heavenly spheres. This means that the same arithmetic proportions were found in music as in nature, giving music an influence on the soul, insofar as the movements of the stars were considered to be perfect. However, while Plato took it as axiomatic that music was a vector of harmony, he bore in mind that music, like all of the arts, imitates and copies nature but does not embody it. Accordingly, what poets gave to the masses was only imitations of nature, a harsh, ironic judgment given the number of tragedies written by Plato. When he describes his ideal city, Socrates' pupil firmly condemns any musical innovation. Quote, for a change to a new type of music is something to beware of as a hazard of all our fortunes. From the Republic. In fact, what Plato is deploring here is the ever-growing autonomy of the 5th century of instrumental playing, which he considers of little value. Music must necessarily be combined with words, logos, and in the present case, poetry. It's only when music serves poetry that it has any worth, because it then becomes akin to logos, which is philosophy's weapon. Philosophies were sent by the gods to teach men about ideas. Poets, too, are here to bring men closer to the divine. So here, music's function, for Plato, according to this article, music to be useful, it is paired with poetry. And if you just have the music without the poetry, then it's dumb, stupid. But united with words, it could help bring people to the divine. Okay, Plato poses certain conditions, though, because there is good music and bad music. For music to be worthy of interest, it should be simple, free of ornaments, and able to enhance poetry, as compared with philosophy, which is bare discourse. This is why Plato bans any lyrical poets, such as Homer, from his ideal city. He does not want citizens to be duped, and he wants to minimize the amount of imitation contained in music. In his mind, beauty, purity, and truth go hand in hand. Music is beautiful only if it is pure, devoid of anything superfluous, and promotes truth. It helps to clarify the idea of beauty. Alright, 2 more paragraphs. Plato sees the good as subordinate to the beautiful in both art and people. For people to be good, they must be taught what is true. The ideal city is made up exclusively of people who are just and good. With regard to music, Plato believes that it is essential in the education of young citizens because it influences the soul and makes it good. In Book 2 of The Laws, Socrates talks about the psychosomatic education of children. In the simplest of gestures, such as rocking a child, the child is in contact with music. It pacifies and calms the troubles of the soul. By making it compulsory to learn music, which would mean understanding good music, Plato says he is encouraging people's soul to be good and just. It follows that musicians have a role to play in educating people and must be constantly watchful in their role as guide. Learning music is not a goal in itself, however, but a means of attaining goodness, and it should be combined with gymnastics. Lastly, unlike the Athenian model of democracy, in which only men who are sons of citizens can attain citizenship themselves, Plato holds that to protect and maintain the new city, both men and women should receive the same education. So, interesting there. We don't have to deep dive and study Plato and say, oh, that's right, that's wrong about Plato. Just want to highlight here that for Plato, music was very serious business, and he had a lot to say about the powers of music, and then also how training oneself in music could help cultivate oneself, cultivate a society too at large to be a particular way. All right, let's just look at a little bit more Plato. So, what did Plato think about the effect of music on the soul and body? According to Plato, music is able to bypass reason and penetrate into the very core of the self, causing great impact on the character, because more than anything else, rhythm and harmony find their way into the inmost soul and take strongest hold upon it. Ancient Greeks also believed that music that travels with air will enter the body via the ears as gate to the soul, and the brain process the sound, which eventually will be transmitted throughout the body with the blood. This way, the effect of the music will reach each organ and finally the soul. Even without any knowledge about biochemistry, ancient Greeks had an amazingly precise typo view on the subject. Today, we already know that the brain reacts to a certain type of sound, the corresponding bioreaction that is indeed transferred onto the body, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to read the rest of this article, but let us just remark that here we have discussions about music's role in society. Music isn't just, oh yeah, I like to listen to music. That's my favorite band. It seems like the ancients, the Greeks at least, had a whole science of understanding what are the different types of music, how do they associate also with lyrics, and what are the effects that they had. And as we study more Greek and learn more about Greek stuff, yeah, I think that is one of our potential richest troves to learn more about this stuff, as we have so many Greek texts and things about Greeks preserved. Whereas, I will assume that, for instance, there's a ton of Chinese teachings about music and what music does, but for an English first speaker, maybe a little bit less accessible, or a lot less accessible, to go down that. Whereas, speaking English, living in the West, looking at the traditions of the Greeks, and then also how the Latins interpreted this stuff, I think is a fruitful path to determine how people have thought about things we take for granted every day, such as music. And we could look, so I was mentioning like this whole 3 to 6 minute track thing. We could say that one of the forms that music takes today is it's been one of the first things to be commoditized, right? So instead of music helping and making society perform in a particular beautiful and harmonious way, now we have these announcements. It's like, well, back in the early 2000s, it was like, you don't pirate your MP3s. That's bad. Now music is one of the first things that took on with subscription services, with Spotify and stuff. So you actually have to, pay money all the time for music, rather than music just being there to serve you. You could learn about music and so on. So this is to say, in the modern world, right, we have music playing some very interesting roles, especially as it's mixed up with all the commercial stuff. And I want to bring it up, so going along with the Plato stuff, Plato mentioned too how the music stuff is often associated with like gymnastics, right? The Greeks are famous for being the originators of the Olympic Games. So how do you refine your body and do all that workout and stuff? Of course, not only do we have a lot of music that has to do with work, like, working on the computer and all that sort of stuff, but if you search for workout music, then you're likewise going to find a lot of things. And of course, if you search for particular genres, like, dance, this or that, you could even search by beats per minute and some more sophisticated measures. You'll find all sorts of stuff. So here's some examples. All right, let's to get jacked. What sort of sounds do we have to hear? Let's hear it. So if you weren't working out or doing anything, this would probably be thoroughly boring and not interesting to listen to. But if you are doing a workout or something, to have steady beats like this, maybe building up in difficulty, having some sort of progression, the music could really aid in how people exercise and work out. And if you were to open a gym or do some business, right, then you might think very carefully selecting the sort of music that you want to be conducive to the sort of environment that you want to have where you are. All right, interesting modern history note by Reaper here. Reaper says, songs are 3 to 5 minutes because, quote, the 78 disc severely limits the length that a song could be. Only so much music can fit onto the disc. The 78 comes in two sizes, 10 inches that holds 3 minutes of music and a 12-inch that holds 4. Okay, so Reaper here is bringing up this interesting note here that in our modern society, a lot of the forms of music and stuff that we have might be related to constraints based on the technology. And like another example of that is if we look at like the old 8-bit music, right? So a lot of these sounds of like classic video games and stuff these things sounded like this because of the nature of the technology and the limitations that are built into that technology that people had to work around. And now this term chiptune is like this new genre label to refer to how this there's been a rebooted interest in this stuff. Another famous example is keygen music. So when people would download software to steal software, then there would be a particular sort of sound often associated with the programs. You would use to do that. Stopped before 30 seconds. I'm not going to get a copyright strike from a person who breaks copyright strikes. Let's have none of that. Okay. Anyways, the point here is, as Reaper's saying, so we might see how pop music played on the radio, took a particular form due to technological constraints. Then going forward through a lot of the music that we as 21st century people know, we could see how old electronic music especially reveals like technical constraints, steering and deciding the shape, the form of the music that we see. And yeah, there was actually something I was looking at right at the beginning of the show. So I just searched like music games, and I came across this PBS Kids, getting kids used to the process of electronic music. So let's
pick a spot to rock out.
All right, let's go to the junkyard.
The junkyard. Move these up and down to change their height and change their sound.
Oh wow, look at those infinity clouds.
This shows you height, how tall something is.
So, if you look at this game, it's computerized, right? This guy goes at a speed and you could toggle it here. Anyways, so this sort of stuff it's interesting because it's showing how with a lot of electronic music, rather than humans and human rhythms, is based on computers and computer clocks. So this was one of the things I was talking about on one of my previous Alan streams about clocks and timekeeping. But we could see in music too how the nature of electronic music is, rather than being based on like a human rhythm, it's programming. You're, as a human, you're arranging, you're programming stuff, and then there's a regular clock-like thing that determines what you hear. So here's another game on this PBS Kids thing.
Cyber Pattern Player. Tap on squares to make a pattern you can see and hear.
So this is, once again, like, it's a type of programming, right? It's sound programming, and you could see how the this is always moving at the same speed. So let's check out one of the pre-made patterns. So you could go and check out this website if you want to play these yourself. But I think the important point to see here is, okay, if we put on our Play-Doh Republic tinfoil hats for a bit, you could see how the music, the form of the music that a society has is going to reflect things about what the society values, what sort of direction as a whole the society is going towards. So in this particular case, we could see in our current era, a lot of our society is a technological society. A lot of our society revolves around clocks and computers. Hecabana says, reminds me of that Beat Pad Beat Mania game. Oh yes. So now let's just get to the juicy stuff of the stream. We are going to get into the modern stuff and my current thesis regarding metaverse stuff. So let us skip ahead to this. So I have this working thesis. People will like look at Zuckerberg and the metaverse and be like, oh, you know, Meta looks lame. You know, who would ever want to do that? Well, let me tell you how it's going to work. The way in which metaverse wins is through fun, basically. So Hecabena here is mentioning these beat games, for example. And these beat games, I know people who have played these things. They're extremely popular. So let's look at some examples of some music game. So as this is Alan's stream, we're going to play a track from a guy named Alan. Okay, now this is my competition. You know, people streaming beat games. I gotta study the expertise of my competition. Let's see. So as opposed to the PBS Kids game, then you know, you're gonna get serious adults playing these games that require lots of reflex and stuff. I bet if I played this game, I would like insta lose. But very popular. Like this particular video, million views, 21 uplights, and it's like literally a guy pressing arrow keys on a keyboard. We won't get copyright stricken, but that's to say, how will people get involved in metaverse or so on and so forth? One of the key ways is music, very powerful, and games. So games mixed with music, so kind of like a modern digital dance. It's almost like a byte dance. Oh, what's byte dance? Byte dance? What? So there's no coincidence that there's a lot of dance and stuff mixed up in all these digital technologies, because it will be by fun and dance and music and things like this that a lot of the new technologies that we see in the world will become popularized. 字节跳动. Alright, Reaper says you can search YouTube for tracker music. Alright, let's do what Reaper says and look at some tracker music for some sick electronic beats. Tracker music. Okay, cool. So then we might even have some interesting visuals of what some of the ways in which people compose software looked like, which could be cool. So here I think these are all like chord symbols. skip ahead a bit. So to look at the whole history of synthesizers and all that, that's a whole nother topic. Synthesizers, electronic music, and all of that. But once again, there's this general point that the form of the music reflects the technology with this electronic music. And through PBS Kids and then the Alan Walker demo there, these music games, then you could see how, in many ways, our culture is being driven by, on the one hand, clocks. So as opposed to the sun and the moon, these natural rhythms, now we run on artificial time, we run on clocks, and that's all associated too with the music. So I want to show just a couple more examples of contemporary stuff. So how will the metaverse come to be? Let's look at the Beat Saber game. And this particular example I found especially revealing because you're going to see it uses an anime girl avatar. So anime, it's a meme song. And of course it's electronic music and in this VR world Beat Saber thing. So let us look at this very popular video. 28 million views, 482 K uplikes. This is the vector by which the metaverse and all this stuff takes hold of people. Reaper says, OMG, that is tracker music without the tracker running. Just say no. So once again, how is it that you get people to have avatars? So they might think that avatar is cringe during, their obligatory business meeting and stuff, but they'll put up with it because they want to keep their jobs. But on people's off hours, then, you might become your favorite, schoolgirl Japanese character. Reaper says, Alan, you might touch on the fact that a lot of popular mainstream genres such as rock and roll or hip hop or country all have deep roots in Christian choir music. The people often started in these. Yeah, I don't know enough about the history of that, but I'll consider looking as I learn more about church and religious music. I might have some more things to say. I will point out so like you could see I have some Eastern Orthodox icons in the background. That's the tradition that I'm becoming a part of. A lot of the so-called church music that we see in America, you could say it's pretty much indistinguishable just from rock and roll and the popular music. So it would be like that sort of music forked off a long time ago and basically became secular music. So it's not so much that Christian choir music influenced all of these genres as they all kind of forked off together. But that I am not able to talk about just now and haven't done enough research about it. Let us though look at, so related to this, let's listen to some conspiracy pop. So I found this song, Kathy Don't Go to the Supermarket. And this particular song, I guess it was created by what you would call like a cult group. But as far as this genre of pop music goes, it's a very catchy song. Let's take a look.
Hey guys and gals, get hip with a new craze. Register today for your very own personal 666 barcode implant.
What?
No more need to carry cash or credit cards. The price of the goods you buy is now automatically subtracted from your bank account by the computer terminal at the checkout stand. It's fast. It's easy.
Now, does that sound like something that we'll be seeing soon? Got a Fed coming up here. Reaper says, I'm saying often the actual artist started singing in choirs, so the church influencing people to do music, etc. Yeah, well, I would say to this that naturally people are drawn towards music. So oftentimes it would be churches and places like that would be the place somebody would have to explore. Like most people would start playing like piano or something because as a child then they would be offered the option to play piano. I'll just give one example though of a way in which like more traditional church music would be very, very different from what is called like Christian or church music today. So there's this word dispassionate as opposed to passionate. So here just on Google we see adjective, not influenced by strong emotion and so able to be rational and impartial. So a lot of the traditional church music, it's supposed to be rather dispassionate, so it's not like these vocal gymnastics over the top, and in addition to being dispassionate in this particular way, so oftentimes you'll hear about like chants. So the old Christian music would be like chanting, very controlled, very sober, versus a lot of the contemporary and not even going back into like 1800s 1900s, a lot of emotionalism. And then also too there's this idea of celebrity and fame. So with old church music, you wouldn't even know the names of the people in the choir. People wouldn't even, if they made some composition, they might not even want it to be known that they made that composition. Whereas you could see, of course, with a lot of musicians in modern time, number one, they want to be famous. They want their name to be out there. And number two, the stirring up emotion and being passionate is like one of the key features of the music. Somebody might say, like, I like this song because it stirs up all this like happiness, or even sad songs. Like if we go back to like K-pop land, the Asians, they love their emotional ballad music, where you could hear about let's just look at this playlist. So soft Chinese ballads that make me feel again playlist. Okay, so we're not going to listen to a bunch of sad Chinese songs now. The point here being that the sort of aims, the goals of a lot of contemporary music would be very, very different from traditional Christian music. And maybe, I don't know about traditions that aren't like overtly Christian, but like, let's just say, like, do Buddhists even have music, or are Buddhists kind of anti-music? I'm actually not sure. The project, though, of a lot of like American kind of Christian music is this over-the-top, very emotional stuff, and oftentimes it's featuring like a soloist putting the spotlight on one person. Whereas if you just see like a huge assembly of just monks and you don't even know their names and they're all chanting together in a relatively simple way, sustain often for a very long time, and a more dispassionate feel. I don't know how to, a dispassionate aura thing about it. You could see that even the very objectives of these two types of music are very different. Okay. Hekabena says, I'm considering getting an RFID chip implant for the hell of it. Who? Yeah, well, for anybody who's been researching this, you've probably seen like Sweden chips in hand on the tinfoil networks. This story has been going around a lot. So here, December 1st, 2021, facing the beep mandate, more Swedes get silicon fun under the skin. And Sweden seems to be one of the places that's at the epicenter of it. 5 days ago, here's another rice grain sized implant. Here's an astronaut looking guy.
Europe is building its defenses against the more data on
Will they show a person? What does it look like?
Block to treat some 300 million.
Alright, well, we won't get into this specifically. Let's get back on task to music.
Kathy, don't go to the supermarket today, 'cause there's a very strange man at the checkout stand, and there's a laser scanner where you put your hand. Kathy, don't go to the supermarket today. Don't go, Kathy, don't go. Without a computer ID, there's no way to pay. Don't go, please don't go. I know there's a sale and a special on rice, and you can buy beans at a giveaway price, but that's just their way to get you down there. What you don't know is that they're everywhere. Kathy, don't go to the supermarket today.
Cool. And then the last example I wanted to show of one of these music games too is to say how so dance music, this K-pop thing, it's no joke, the popularity of K-pop. So here I had shown the coffin dance person, so kind of meme song. But then here too, you could see how, so this Blackpink group, they're a famous K-pop band. But how are you going to get just everyday people, non-computer nerds, embracing all this, AR, VR stuff? So here you see this pretty, not nerd kind of normal girl, I think. We could 106K survivors. And, okay. This person likes to demo their Beat Saber stuff. So what happens is, like, if, attractive female person is doing this stuff, then in a lot of people's head, then that means this is the cool thing to do. I should get into this as well. So then, Sukiyaki girl will also like me. Two towers. That's almost kind of two towers. The esoteric meaning of the twin pillars, Boaz and Joachim. Since the dawn of civilization, the entrance of sacred and mysterious places has been guarded by two pillars. Whether in art or in architecture, twin pillars are archetypal symbols representing an important gateway or passage towards the unknown. In Beep, the pillars are named Yakin and Boaz and represent one of the Brotherhood's most recognizable symbols, prominently featured in Bleep art, documents, and buildings. All right, and what do we have here? Let's look at the towers. This is totally that's totally going into the unknown, right? It's like you have the void, and it's not the void of like space as in NASA's idea of space. Instead, it's space as in cyberspace. And here we have the twin pillars of K-pop. Reaper says, bro, it's just a lightsaber game. Alright, it's just a lightsaber game. And also, music is just sound waves. So with a Reaper representative comment there, I think we can conclude today's stream investigating music initially. We got a bunch of very interesting topics to look at in the future, including taking a deeper dive, looking at the sirens, the Pied Piper, and like I was watching at a friend's place earlier this year. It's a Ken Burns country music documentary. So also looking too at how the business, the commercial stuff of America has impacted the form. So I'll say commercial interests and music. We could look at how, especially as launched in the States and with the British, how the commercial interests of record companies and so on and so forth have led to the current shapes and forms we see in music today. So I think that about does it for this stream today. Yeah, if anybody actually has tried out the lightsaber game, or you like to play Dance Dance Revolution, or you play some of these beat games or whatever, if you have experience with these things and could tell me about, why do you play these games? Why is it fun? What draws you in? And so on and so forth. I think that from people's personal experiences and you telling us about how stuff is, there's a whole lot to learn. And together, through Alan's stream or however we may contact each other, we could all do on the ground research and learn a whole lot together. So thanks everybody who joined this stream, and have a. I was trying to think of some music pun, but I failed to. So have a good rest of the day. Thank you.